Edmund Hermann Heinrich August Esswein was a German writer and translator. Born in 1877 in Mannheim, the son of lithographer Josef Esswein, he was educated at the Mainz Gymnasium, studying law and philosophy. He wrote about art, covering people like Aubrey Beardsley, Edward Munch, and Alfred Kubin. His first book seems to be his 1902, Das Atelier, Studien in Prosa. He wrote several works of fantastic and grotesque fiction, such as his collection Die Schrittmacher und anderes, the novel Flimperpimper, Das große Geldschiff, and a prehistorisch-moderne Kulturgroteske, and today's subject, the 1912 Megander, The Man with Two Heads, and other stories. He died in 1934 in München. The Confession of Dr. Webelhorst is the confession of a scientist whose experiment unleashed a plague which resulted in the sudden yet steady solidification of people into greenish stone, and recounts how he escaped from the city where people were driven insane by the outbreak, amidst a truly apocalyptic scenario which I cannot do justice. This alone should have made Esswein's reputation, in my opinion. Dreams in the Old House concerns a man, and his fantastical and historical dreams of the old Huguenot-era house in which he lived, which last until the place is torn down. The Odd Fortune of Franz Wild is the story of Franz Wild, a man who doesn't even live but exists, in ever-increasing poverty, waiting for death. Then a sudden check from an old friend galvanizes him and he wants to kill himself. But just as he decides to live and make the best of life, he is run over in traffic, his head smushed like a melon. Willibald Megander, or the Man with the Two Heads, has Willibald Megander drink himself into a wreck over a woman leaving him, prematurely ending his studies of philosophy. He returns to his hometown and becomes the right-hand man of the mayor, who is too fat and lazy to run his town. Megander spends 20 years beautifying and modernizing the town, while walling in the entire top floor of his house where his parents used to live, for some reason, and absorbing the library of his late uncle, the papal prelate, annoyed about the exciting lives others get to lead. After a vacation where he gets his spirits back after he felt his head was old and broken, the same woman who turned him to alcoholism ruins his hopes again, and he shuts himself in his house, speaking to his dead parents through the wall, shut off from the whole world in a walled-in library, before destroying everything and hanging himself while positioned like Christ. In The Ghost Eater and the Rain-Trude, or the story of a magician's marriage, Adrian Huckenbrecht, a sorcerer who lived in a house by the suicide graveyard, and who had plagued his city in many and varied ways, be it bloody rain lasting for days, or the spiritual manifestation of Roman Lucrezia with dagger firmly wedged in her stomach, or a 5-legged demon cow, is dead. His apprentice and heir Friedrich Findelmann is blamed for the continued haunting of the city, but then, amid making plans for revenge on the whole city, he marries, but his wife actively hates his eccentricity, which ends with Findelmann killing dozens of priests in a mad rage, and hanging their severed limbs all over his fence before killing himself. But not before leaving behind one more surprise for the good burgers. Renus 5, or the suicide of student Brubacher, concerns a shy boy who, when he thinks his friends ditched him, rents out a rowboat on his own, and climbs aboard an old long-abandoned steamboat to find a sudden and untimely death. Tom Nervint is the story of a man obsessed with a horoscope given to him by an occultist, who had drained him of funds by virtue of occult experiments. He hadn't thought of it for years, but then the individual bizarre occurrences foretold by the horoscope start happening, and seeing the horoscope also mentions his death, he is kind of nervous. The Scarecrow is a story of how, during a murderous heatwave driving people to madness, murder, and more, a long-suffering man kills himself in front of a scarecrow, and his spilt blood temporarily gives it life. It is a collection of bizarre, bloody, and weird stories, and it should be more well known today.